I'm CK. Today we've got another one from Cubusynth. This is in their 4 series. I did their 4 decay a week or so ago. And this is the 4 TRG, or trigger. It's a quad random gate skipper. So you send gate pulses into it, and based on the probability, choose whether that gate goes through or whether it gets skipped this time. It also has a mode where you can pull everything out and input out of one, and that will create its own clock internally, and then can do some ratcheting and things like that, which we'll play with when we get to the rack. But right now, it's probably going to be pretty easy to put together because most surface mount is already pre-installed, but should be fun anyway, and I'll be looking forward to seeing how it sounds with percussion units in the rack. And I hope you enjoy the video. And here's the bag. Got the documentation behind this URL, but I actually downloaded it from Thonk, and I have it up on my iPad right now. And out of Portugal. Open the bag, and it's all paper, which is good because I can recycle all of that stuff. Let's pull all the interesting bits out. Make sure nothing else is in the bag, and it isn't. Put that in the recycling pile. Let's take a look at the front panel first. And by the way, there's a scratch on my hand. I didn't hurt myself working. The cat and I were fighting, and he kicked a little bit too hard. But that's okay. That's what kitty cats do, and I like that. So we've got 4 trig, probability for 1, probability for 2, probability for 3, probability for 4 of the gate or trigger signal going through. Now you can see lightly under here it says clock rate. If you don't have anything coming in the clock, number 1 generates its own clock based on that position, is my understanding. Let's look at the circuit board. Again, mostly surface mount pre-installed, they say. Here it is. There's power connector, a whole bunch of some transistors, some resistors, big old cap, a big, oh, it's an Atmel microprocessor here. So this has got code inside it that's doing most of the work, the probabilistic math probably. And on the other side we've got pot, actually pot. So we'll have to see about the pot if they have a metal back, because this pot is right on top of the power connector. Then 4 LEDs, take a look at those. And jacks for in and out, in, out. So not going to be a lot for us to put on, just the controls and the LEDs on the front. Let me grab a parts bin, parts tray, whatever. See what we got. Got a power connector, which is great. Okay, these are plastic on the back, so they're not going to be a problem now. They do not have the values on the board, but we'll see if they are different. These are all B104, so they're all 100K. So far they're all 100K. They should all be 100K. If 3 of them are 100K, 4 of them should be 100K. And they are. Looks like we've got some little blue LEDs. And I don't have the battery in my LED buddy went dead, so I'll use my meter in continuity mode to check out this LED. Nice blue LED. Make sure I'm in the camera. There we go. That's fine. And some jacks and panel nuts and the power connector and 1 spacer. So we'll put it all together. Obviously it's going to go together pretty dang quickly. And then put it in the rack. I'll get the soldering iron heated up and we'll get this thing put together. And I'm looking at the build guide. Obviously, there's not a lot you need to know as you put this together. But we'll start. They'd like us to start with putting the power connector on. Now, as you can see, it's not shielded, so you'll just have to be careful to make sure you get the red stripe on the place where it says red once we put it in the rack. And I don't know, does he have diode protection in here? I can't really tell. I think so. I think I see a diode, but I'm not certain. Not going to swear to it. But we'll start by soldering one of the pins, taking a look, making sure it's all flat, and it's all flat. So I'll do the other pins. I'm going to check here also to make sure that there's no interference on the pot. It's going to be right on top of it. Now we're going to drop the LEDs in, and let me make sure if they've got, yeah, they've got a square first bend the pins. What do you mean bend the pins? Why should I bend the pins? Saying he wants us to bend the pins inward. I'm not real sure why. Longer leg, the positive lead goes in the square hole. Again, first bend the soldered legs of the LEDs like shown in the picture. I don't see anything bent in the picture, quite frankly, except they seem to be bent inwards a little bit, but I don't really know why. They fit just fine that way. We are going to, I'm not going to solder them now. He actually says solder them. Make sure they don't stand off the PCB more than 10 millimeters. I agree, because let me show you here. After I put this, there's only three LED. There's 4 LEDs. Where's the other LED? I only have 3 LEDs. There. No, it's stuck. It's stuck inside the jack. Thank you, Jack. So what's going to be happening here is, if you look on the back of the panel, there are translucent windows that the LED will be shining through, and the build guide author says to just solder them about 10 millimeters off the board. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to put the panel on and then push them up against and solder them at that point. I always find that more reliable, for me at least. So I'm not going to do the soldering yet. Now we'll put the standoff on. Take a little screw, put the brass standoff in. These are nylon screws, or plastic. I don't know if they're actually nylon or some other composite type material. I don't care whether it's that tight. Okay, that goes like that. Now we put the pots on. Now we'll put the jacks on. Now on these, in the middle here, they share a ground hole, which I guess is okay. It saves you a tiny bit of vertical space, but I'm going to do those first. And that's all those guys on board. Now I'm going to slide the front panel on, because we've got all the components on. Make sure all these things are straight. Get the jacks all manipulated correctly. There we go. Now there's J18 here. I think this is probably a programming connector for the Atmel microprocessor, if you wanted to go ahead and try and change the coding there. I don't know if he puts the code up in GitHub or something. I'm going to go ahead and screw this screw into the spacer, because that will hold everything together for us. Everything seems very stable, and this is where we're going to be pushing the LEDs forward, but I'm not going to do that yet. I'm going to solder all these other components first. Flip my solder board. Solder thing over, grab some more solder, and do a bunch of soldering. I'm going to do a quick double check to make sure I got all of them, minus the LEDs, of course. Now you do want to be really careful. These jack pins around the Atmel, you don't want to heat up any of the microprocessor pins, and you also don't want to bridge across to them. I have not, but just be careful, because these four corners are very close. This one in particular is very close to pin 8. Okay, now we're going to do the LEDs, and I'm going to take a look here, and that is basically centered right there on the little translucent window. So I'll do one leg and probably bump it, and I did bump it, as I almost always do. So we'll just do that again. We'll reheat that solder, move the LED around a little bit, and there we go. It's right behind the window. Let it cool. Don't move your hand away too fast. I have made that mistake in the past and said, okay, it's in place, and then moved my hand and of course came loose again. So now we'll do the same thing with this one. We'll try and do the same thing with this one. I'm just double checking my LED placement, and it seems all good. We'll see when it lights up. Actually, we may never even be able to tell. Now we'll put the panel nuts on the jacks. And then we'll take our power connector, and there's the red stripe, and it'll go on the red. Double check our knobs move all smoothly, and they do. So that's it, quick and easy. That's the front, the side, the back, the other side, the top, and the bottom. Let's go ahead and put it in the rack and see how she skips. Alright, we're set up in the rack. I don't have it turned on yet. I do have the scope turned on. I'll bring that up. And now I will turn on the rack, because you should start seeing pulses. I had to go behind the rack to do that because reasons. And now we've got some stuff happening on the scope, but it's acting kind of weird. Okay, so the yellow line is the input signal, the input trigger. In fact, that's not a trigger, that's a slope, but that should be a straight trigger. Why is this not giving me just a straight pulse? So the number 1, the yellow line is the input trigger. The magenta line in the center is the number 1 output. This is number 2 output. I could put number 3 up, but I don't think I will. I think this will be illustrative enough. So let's see. We've got the probability. Oh, let's hear what it sounds like. What are we not? There we go. So the magenta line is showing you that the pulses are only coming every now and again. Then it goes dark for a while, flat for a while, and then pulses, because the probability is about half. If I take probability up to 100%, you'll see it matches exactly with what's happening from the input. The number 2 is the same because that's at full probability, and you'll notice on the unit the LEDs are firing off. Now if I take number 2, the bottom pulse, down to like 50% probability, you can see it's not doing much. If I take it down to 0, it just doesn't fire off at all. Now, as we're listening to this snare drum, if I take this down, so it's giving us a little variability in what we're doing. Now I'm going to do the next thing, which takes, if I take number 1 input out, ignore the yellow for right now. I'm oh no, I'll leave it alone. What's happening is this is now the clock. So it acts almost like an LFO. And I think if we take the output from that, let me grab another short cable, which just fell on the floor. If I take the output from that and put it in here, and turn the probability up, forgot to do that. Actually, let me take that back out. Okay, we don't have to feed it that way. I was wrong. I thought I was wrong. So let's go back. So now the number 2 is getting the pulse from the number 1 clock and using its own probability on that. So if I go to 100% there, and why did that drop off? Oh, I know why it dropped off, because I unplugged it. We'll see that they match. But as I turn down the probability on number 2, you'll see the magenta line acting a little differently. So you don't have to have an external trigger if you're willing. So if I go over to 3, now number 3 is acting differently than number 2, and number 1, let me see if I can, where I can come for number 1. I'm trying to remember where I want it. Red, it'll be this one. Nope, won't be that one. I'm going to take, this is now the output. That's number 1 now. That's number 2, and that's number 3. We can speed that number 1 up a lot, as you can see. Giving you some interesting patterns. Now, you can imagine, I don't have 2 percussion racks. Oh, I do have 2 percussion racks in here. No, I don't. I only have 1. Let's take the output from number 3 and plug it into, well, that's what I'm doing for now. Now I'm trying to, hold on, there's going to be a camera skip while I figure my cabling out. Okay, now I'm going to take the number 3 output and put it in the accent. Don't really hear a difference there. Let me try. No, I'd have to use that with something else. But, so be that as it may, that's what we're doing here. can speed up the clock, take the probabilities way down, and then they'll do interesting things. Take the probability way up. Slow that back down. So you can see how it works. It's if you want to go in, again, you can do it straight from a regular clock source in. Where is that? Plug that back into that. And I can speed that up. And with that, you suddenly have everything you want. You can have 4 individual probabilistic outputs. Turn one's probability up a little more. I don't think what do I have? Oh, I have that connected to the magenta. Why on earth do I have? Okay, so number 1 is plugged into the magenta line at the bottom. Cyan line at the bottom. I got confused. So we'll adjust that a little bit. So again, it's skipping based on the probability setting you have here. It cascades down, and if you take your input out, it acts as an LFO, giving you plenty of clocks so you don't have to devote, if you have only one LFO in your rack, this can take the place of that for specifically this unit. Even though technically, if you turn everything up to 100%, suddenly you have a 4 output LFO, which is pretty neat in and of itself. So that's the 4 trigger, and there's more to it. There's as it ratchets through, it drops voltage down a little bit. You can read that in the manual. I don't want to describe it too much because I won't do it justice. But very simple build since it was mostly surface mount pre-installed, but a good unit. And very useful if you want to use it for the probabilistic side to skip beats or skip notes in a sequence, you can do that. Or you can, again, just use it as a 4 output LFO if you want. So multi-purpose. And if you look at the meter next to it, it's using very little power. Peak of 21 millivolts, which is not bad, and nothing on the 12-volt line. It's only using the plus 12 line. So very, very efficient. And that is the 4 trig. And I hope you enjoyed the video.